Hello and welcome to Your Coaching Journey, a podcast for doctors about coaching. Whether you're a coaching doctor, a doctor who is learning to coach, or a doctor who'd like to build coaching into your professional life, then this is the podcast for you. Hello, I'm Tom Dillon, and with me today is my co-host and business partner, Helen. How are you today, Helen?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm very well, thank you very much.
Good.
Yes, looking forward to another podcast episode. What is it we're talking about today, Helen?
Well, I thought it might be useful to explore something that helps us to reflect a little bit.
And what might that something be?
It's called the Johari Window.
The Johari Window. Sounds very exotic, doesn't it?
It does.
Johari Window.
Now, you introduced me to the Johari Window.
Did I?
Some years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's
What a lovely guy I am.
I know.
I'm very giving.
It's for rock and roll. And it's recently come up again in my studies with my master's degree that I'm doing.
In what context has it come up?
In terms of reflection as a coach, and I was thinking, yes, we can use it as personal reflection, but we might also be able to use it as a tool to help our coachees reflect.
Okay. Well, let's explore it and see if it is
Yes.
useful.
Absolutely. Let's try this out. So why don't you tell our listeners about the Johari Window? Okay,
So the Johari window is just basically a grid. It's a square grid with four. It's like the square window on Play School. We're going through the square window. So it's like that. It's got four areas to it.
We'll put this on our resources.
We will put it on the resources. Yeah. So the Johari window is created by two guys, one called Joe, one called Harry, who combined their names to be Johari. Probably because it does sound more exotic.
It does.
Better than Joe and Harry's window.
Yeah. Or the square window on Play School.
Yeah. So there are four quadrants. The first one is the information, and really it addresses information and who knows the information.
Okay.
So the first quadrant is the information that we know about ourselves and that we choose to share with others. So it's known to us, known to others.
Okay.
And we call that the arena. I think some people might call it other things, but in this model it's called the arena. And so if we think, what sort of things do you think those bits of information might be?
So I guess that's how we might describe ourselves, but also how other people would describe us, where they overlap.
Yes.
So I know I have green eyes. You would say that I have green eyes.
Yes, maybe, unless I was colourblind, in which case I might be a bit confused about that.
Okay.
But yes, theoretically, yeah.
So how we look, how we behave, perhaps in certain situations.
Yes, probably more about the information that we share. So if you were entering a new team at work, you might share snippets of stuff about your personal life.
Oh, yeah.
So you might share the fact that you're married, you have children, but you might not go much further than that initially until you get to know people a bit better. In terms of your work experience, you might share some things about your work experience. In terms of your personality, you might choose to share something about that.
And the more you get to know these people, the more goes into that arena, the more you open up.
Yeah, and I guess where it's quite helpful to think about in terms of working with teams is the fact that we're trying to increase the size of the arena. So that's just one quadrant. So if we share the other quadrants, then we have an understanding of why the arena is useful. But as I say, it's really, that's the information we're happy to share with others.
Yeah.
And we don't feel there's any risk in sharing that. Maybe not your PIN number.
That should always stay hidden.
Yeah. So, definitely things that we just readily share. And, so if we met someone networking, we might readily share what our business is, what our job role is, things like that.
Okay. So what's the next quadrant we're looking at?
So the next quadrant is the facade.
The facade.
Yes, very grand, isn't it? So the facade is the information that we know about ourselves, but we choose not to share with other people.
Okay, like our PIN number.
Like our PIN number. What other things do you think might fit into that quadrant?
So in the same context, if we're going into a new team, we might perhaps keep back the things we're not quite so good at, our weaknesses.
Yeah, definitely when you enter a new team, you're trying to make a good first impression, aren't you? You're trying to reassure them that you know what you're doing, that you're quite capable, and maybe you don't. So that will all sit in the facade. And again, thinking about people that we're first meeting, we might not share our opinions of lots of things. So I was with a team yesterday and we were kind of doing people you admire. And someone said Donald Trump. Now,
That's something you need to keep to yourself, isn't
well,
it?
it was a surprise. And he kind of gave his explanation of why. But I think things that you might feel would be contentious, I think might stay in that facade for a while.
Yes.
Until you understood how everyone else felt. And obviously coming into a new team, people in an existing team might more readily talk about things openly. So there might be more in their arena that they're sharing with others than you feel willing to do when you first enter a team.
Yeah.
You're finding out the lay of the land, getting a grip on, getting a handle on things, and you're seeing what it's safe to share.
I heard someone talking about someone who went into a new team and they all went to the pub on a Friday and he didn't, because what he didn't feel sure about sharing was the fact that he didn't drink for religious reasons.
Yeah.
And so that would have been the facade, that he just didn't go out on the Friday after work. As time progressed and he opened up to the team, he opened up to a couple of people that was the case, and they said, come anyway. And there was no judgment, but there was that fear of judgment, that fear of sharing.
Yeah.
So that would be something that moves then from the facade into the arena as you get to know people more.
And it could be your opinions of people in the team.
Yes.
That if you come into a team and think, oh God, they don't do any work, they just seem to sit around all day. You might, if you were immersed in the team for a long time, you might start to hold people to account for things they're not doing. Or just recognise and talk to other people like, oh, so that guy over there, he never seems to do any work. What's that? But you probably wouldn't do that when you first come in. You'd keep that to yourself, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
Just
watch.
clock it. And actually, again, the team I was with yesterday, there's a new guy in there, and I said, "How's it going? How are you finding it? What are you noticing?" And he said, "I'm just watching at the moment. I'm just taking it all in. I'm not saying too much." And again, it's that he is just weighing people up and seeing who he can trust, who perhaps he can't at that point.
What the culture is like.
What the culture's like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and obviously the culture is going to come into what opinions you share, but also values, I think, could be, hopefully, if you join a new team, you will have some shared values. The organisational values, if they've been communicated, you should all share those values, but you'll have your own values as well, and you might choose not to share them. So the guy who's an admirer of Donald Trump, he may have values that feed into that he might not want to share widely.
Yeah.
So that's the facade. So what have we got? We've got values, opinions, weaknesses, maybe mistakes that we've made, maybe past mistakes that we don't want people. We're all quite self-censoring of our history, aren't we? And so when we meet people for the first time, we're not likely to share things that we perhaps feel guilty about, shameful about.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that might fit into the facade.
Really personal stuff.
Yeah.
Perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's fair, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone needs to feel safe. There's that psychological safety. If we give too much away, we might be judged. It
Yes.
might not do our career too much good. So the third quadrant is the blind spot. So these are the things that we don't know about ourselves, and other people do know, but they don't tell us.
Oh, okay.
These are the things that they'll talk about to other people behind our backs, but just
So-
never say to us.
If we were that person not doing much work,
Yes.
and a new person came into the team and observed that we weren't doing much work, that, for want of a better term, laziness or perceived laziness would sit in that blind spot,
Yes.
potentially.
And that new person, when they find their feet and they get the lay of the land, they might well talk to other people and go, that guy doesn't seem to do any work. And they go, nah, that's just him. He doesn't. He's a bit of a free rider. He just turns up every day, but he's not really here. So that could be something that does get talked about, but no one actually goes and confronts that person and holds them to account for what they're not doing. Or it could be just an annoying habit that you have that.
Or something that we do that there's actually a shortcut for. Like in a system, even using something like Excel, we could do it one way, and it's not until we get feedback from someone else that we find out that there's a a shortcut.
Yeah, so it could be skills, that
Yeah.
you're perhaps not particularly competent at a certain procedure, but it's more about you rather than shortcuts and things like that. So that could fit into the blind spot, but it generally would be more of a, he's not very good at that, is he? We won't ask him to do that because he's not good. Whereas if you have that person's interest at heart, you might well go and talk to them about what's missing for them, what the shortcut is. But quite often people don't tell you, do they? They just leave you to suffer. So that's the blind spot, and I say it's really the things that we just don't recognise about ourselves. Other things might be strengths that we have, that someone goes, oh, you're really good at that. Why are you not doing more of that? And we've just not recognised it as a strength.
So things like that could come out on a 360 feedback.
Yeah, so for those that aren't familiar with the phrase, so 360 feedback is multi-source feedback. It's a way of getting input from other people. So generally a questionnaire goes out to you. So you report back on yourself, give yourself a score on certain areas, and then other people get it and they give you scores, and then they give you some feedback as well, some verbatim feedback of, I think he does this well, or he doesn't do this so well. So I think that's a great way to uncover the information that lies in the blind spot, because it might not be readily available to you otherwise.
So if we think about new coaches coming through training, one of the things that we do is we do observations. We put people into trios so they get to practice coaching and be observed and get feedback. And that's really useful, because when people are learning a new skill, they don't know how good they are at it or where they need to develop their skills. So that observational feedback would help with that blind spot. Definitely,
yeah. And it's very difficult to progress as a coach unless you receive some fairly honest feedback.
Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? On our course, we start people off quite gently, and we invite people to give feedback. Say, well, just look for the good, look for the things they're doing well. Tell them what they're doing well, because they need that bit of a confidence boost. And people do that. And then as they go through the course, we have to encourage them to give constructive feedback, developmental feedback, and say, come on, you're now in that cozy club of saying, oh yes, you do this really well, oh that was lovely, but you're not actually telling them where they're asking lots of closed questions, or they're asking a question then talking over the person and things like that. So I think that is definitely where we can help someone with their blind spots, just to uncover information that they don't know about themselves. And I think coaching is one of those activities, isn't it, that it tends to be done in isolation. So it's only really the coachee who's observing it generally. They don't know what you're supposed to be doing. They don't know what good practice is.
No.
So they're not usually very well equipped to give you feedback. So I think when I have conversations with my supervisor, I pick up on stuff that he's doing and thinking, but why are you doing that? 'Cause that's not good practice. So that's a way of... definitely. And, we talk about that stuff. So, definitely having those conversations. So whatever arena you're in, being observed and getting feedback on that can be really useful. But obviously we want to get to a point in any organisation, any group setting, where people are open and honest, and again, within reason. We're not going to give away our PIN number, but that people do feel comfortable with sharing. If they have an opinion on something that someone's doing or not doing well, then we can openly share that.
So I'm aware we've got to 3. What's the fourth?
The fourth one is the unknown unknowns. So these are the things we don't know about ourselves, and that other people don't know about us either. So the sort of thing that would fit in there are maybe areas that we could develop, that we could be good at. We just don't know. We've not done it yet.
Yeah.
So when I was doing my initial coach training, I did a course where I was asked to use some hypnotic language. And so I was doing this exercise, and the guy observing, who was running the course, said, oh, you have the perfect voice for hypnotism, hypnotherapy. You've just got a really relaxing voice. Puts people to sleep.
Voice or content?
No. So that wasn't something that in doing the exercise I realised. I didn't get that feedback from the person I was working with, but that's someone observing from the outside going, well, actually, you'd be good at that because your voice lends itself to it. I don't do hypnotherapy, but maybe there's something about that in the coaching room that's useful.
Mm.
But there's an area that was unknown to me. It was unknown to him until he observed me doing it. But within organisations, all sorts of things that people choose not to do just because they've never tried it.
Yeah.
So they don't know that they're good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got these 4 areas. And, when I was looking at it this week in the context of my course, it was in the context of self-reflection as a coach. What do I know that other people know? What do I know that other people don't? And so on. And how we could use those to our advantage to really explore ourselves and know and understand ourselves better. So asking for feedback was one of those. Obviously, being observed and receiving feedback as a coach is something that we can do. And also perhaps exploring new opportunities for learning, maybe going to webinars or workshops and finding out about new topics, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think any learning that we do, particularly when it's around personality, psychology, things like that, it gives us a different lens to look at ourselves through. So if you had never come across any theories of personality, you might, as a introvert, not understanding the concept of introversion, you might see yourself as someone who's shy, who doesn't like crowds, and other people might see you as someone that's quite withholding and difficult because you don't open up and talk to people. Suddenly, learning about introversion gives you an understanding, gives you information, doesn't it? Okay, so that's quite normal for introverts to behave in that way and to feel like that. And then for anyone else in your team to have that understanding of that concept as well, to go, oh, I see. So so it's not being odd, he just doesn't talk. So I think that any learning that you do around psychology and that internal introspection, I think, can be really useful.
So we could also use this as a lens or a window, in fact, to help our clients look through and see and learn more about themselves and their situations. So whether that's in a team, even in a family unit potentially. So what tips do you have around using that with clients?
I think just making them aware of it, and particularly if they are working in a social setting, so there's a group, there's a team that they're working with, and maybe they're having difficulty in understanding why they're not fitting in or why they've got difficulties with certain individuals. And sometimes it is just talking about expanding that arena to get to know more about other people, but also to share more about yourself. And any expansion of that arena generally helps people to come together as a team. So, but obviously on a personal level, just doing the work to increase their awareness of themselves and to understand different psychological, emotional concepts in a way that then allows them to articulate that to other people can be really helpful. So if they suddenly find out, oh, well, I'm an introvert, actually to be able to, within a team, say, the reason I do that is because I have an introversion preference, then suddenly everyone else understands it. So it's no longer the blind spot of going, oh, he's really difficult, isn't he? He doesn't talk very much and can't get an answer out of him. For them to go, oh, yeah, we understand he's introverted. Let's ask him in a different way.
And that's why teams do these psychological profiles, so they can all understand each other better and communicate better. And I'm also thinking about that unknown. If we have clients who are thinking they're maybe a bit stuck, or there's maybe not very much positivity, joy, excitement in their life, perhaps exploring the unknown. What am I good at? What excites me? What new adventures can I go on? Albeit, maybe mini adventures where I can find out more about myself. That could bring in a new dimension, a new dynamic to their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we think about some of the tools that we use on our transformational coaching diploma, we introduce people to lots of different ways of thinking about their situation. So in Gestalt, we look at empty chair exercise where we get someone to sit in someone else's chair and talk as though they are them. So that, again, opens up that arena, doesn't it, to potentially look at how to increase empathy for how someone else might be thinking and feeling. So all sorts of ways we can work with that. And just introducing someone to a solution-focused approach or a cognitive behavioural approach gives them a new landscape to explore their world with and to be able to explain it to other people. So there's definitely a communication piece in there, as well as a self-awareness and understanding for yourself, being able to explain it to other people in a way that opens up that arena.
And coaching in and of itself helps us to understand ourselves better and our thinking and values and beliefs. And when we know that, we can then look to perhaps share it with other people.
Yeah. And I think sometimes coming to coaching and having a coach that normalizes what's going on and lets you know you're not just weird gives you then the confidence to go and talk to other people about it.
Absolutely. So I think it's quite an interesting tool for reflection, for understanding, certainly for team dynamics and for relationships.
Yeah, no, I'm pleased that you've come across it again and it's been useful in terms of that reflection. But definitely something that we can share with our coachees in the coaching room and think about, in their social settings, what they are choosing to share with other people and how maybe sharing more or maybe inviting other people to share more with them that might improve any dynamics that they're struggling with.
Absolutely. Brilliant. I've loved this chat.
Thank you very much. Yes, enjoyed it myself. So thank you.
And next time on the podcast, we will be interviewing another coaching doctor and finding out how they are getting on with their coaching skills and how they're putting them to use. So I look forward to that. And we'll see you next time.
See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.